The air on the Marine Corps base buzzed with an electricity that usually accompanied inspection days, but today the tension was colored by a unique melody. It all began when Sergeant Carter, a man whose voice was better suited for barking commands than hitting high notes, discovered a notice in the Daily Plan. John Fenton, a producer from Hollywood, was coming to the base to select a Marine chorus for his upcoming film, Leathernecks of the Air. The prospect of representing the entire Marine Corps in a major motion picture sent a ripple of excitement through every barracks. Sergeant Carter, seeing an opportunity for glory, decided that his platoon would be the one to secure the prize. He gathered his men, casting a critical eye over the group. We have Gomer Pyle, who had a voice as smooth as mountain water, and a handful of others who could carry a tune. The auditions were a spectacle of their own. Higgins attempted to sing Clementine with a fervor that far outstripped his actual ability, landing himself by the rifle rack, a place reserved for those whose musical aspirations exceeded their talent. Then came Tony, whose Italian renditions were energetic if somewhat chaotic, and Wilkie, whose soft, sentimental delivery earned him a spot immediately. Slowly, a group began to take shape. As the days turned into a frantic blur of rehearsals, Sergeant Carter took it upon himself to act as both director and choreographer. He paced back and forth, waving his arms, instructing the men to point their shoulders in specific directions and to keep their elbows up, insisting that showmanship was just as vital as the music. Despite his lack of formal training, he was convinced that his leadership was the secret ingredient. Yet there was a problem. During the group rehearsals, a single, discordant note would often mar the harmony of their performance. It was a persistent, nagging issue that Sergeant Carter vowed to eliminate, even if it meant rooting out the culprit through tedious rounds of elimination. The men, led by Gomer Pyle, grew increasingly aware that the source of the off-key disruption was none other than the sergeant himself. They found themselves in a delicate predicament. They wanted to win, but they could not achieve the level of harmony required with the sergeant forcing his way through the songs. Gomer, ever the optimist, believed that if they practiced in secret and improved, the sergeant would eventually realize his own limitations and gracefully step aside, choosing to be the power behind the throne rather than the soloist. They resorted to rehearsing in the back of a truck, trying to keep their progress hidden from the man who had initiated the whole project. Fate, however, had other plans. Sergeant Carter, ever the vigilant leader, stumbled upon their secret rehearsal. Yet, in a rare moment of introspection, as he listened to them sing without his own interference, he was struck by the beauty of the music they were producing. He did not hear his own voice clashing with theirs, but rather, he felt a surge of pride in what he believed he had created. He decided to rejoin the group, convinced that with all 9 of them, the sound would be even more magnificent. The final confrontation was inevitable. Gomer, burdened by the weight of truth, approached the sergeant to explain that his voice was simply not suited for the chorus. The reaction was exactly as the others had feared. Sergeant Carter was insulted, hurt, and deeply offended, feeling that his efforts had been met with ingratitude. He shouted and raged, his face flushing with frustration, until, in a sudden and ironic twist, he was struck by a physical ailment that left him unable to speak or sing at all. When the night of the competition arrived, the tension was palpable. The sergeant sat, silent and solemn, having lost his voice just as the curtain was about to rise. Gomer and the rest of the men felt a pang of guilt. They realized that despite his shortcomings, the sergeant was the heart of their group. In a moment of quiet camaraderie, they invited him to join them on stage. They told him he did not need to sing, just to move his lips in sync with their voices. It was a gesture of respect, an acknowledgement that he was still their leader. As they stood before the audience, the music began. They poured their hearts into the performance, and for those few minutes, everything else fell away. The harmony was perfect, the movement was synchronized, and the pride in their eyes was genuine. Sergeant Carter stood with them, moving his lips as agreed, feeling the music resonate through his chest even if his voice remained silent. When they finished, the applause was thunderous. They had done it. They had captured the spirit of the Corps and the admiration of the producer. As the dust settled, Mr. Fenton approached them, full of praise and excitement for the upcoming shoot in Hollywood. The goal had been achieved, and the platoon was headed for the silver screen. They had learned a lesson that transcended the music. It was not just about the notes they hit or the accuracy of their rhythm, but about the bonds of loyalty and the shared effort that define their life as Marines. They had started the journey as a disparate group of individuals, but they ended it as a unified family, ready to face whatever the future held in the bright lights of California. They stood tall, looking toward the horizon, knowing that their time in the sun was just beginning. It was a victory won not just through talent, but through the patience, kindness, and understanding they had shown one another along the way. And as they walked off the stage, with Gomer smiling and the sergeant standing proud, they knew that this experience would be a memory they would cherish forever, a story to be told with laughter and fondness for many years to come. The journey to Hollywood was only the start, for the true prize was the unity they had forged in the face of uncertainty. With the competition behind them, the atmosphere on the base returned to its usual rhythm, yet there was a new lightness in the steps of the men. They packed their bags with a sense of purpose, knowing that the responsibility of representing the entire Marine Corps was a significant honor. Sergeant Carter, though still recovering his voice, carried himself with a renewed sense of pride. He had seen his men excel, and in doing so, he had seen himself reflected in their success. It was a testament to his training and their dedication. The flight to the coast was filled with stories and anticipation. Every Marine, from the youngest private to the sternest sergeant, felt the weight of the moment. They practiced their lines and rehearsed their movements, wanting everything to be perfect for the cameras. They were no longer just men in uniform, but ambassadors of their way of life. The values they held dear, of duty, integrity, and honor, were woven into every interaction they had, and they were eager to show the world what the Marine Corps truly represented. Upon arriving at the studio, they were met with the grand scale of the motion picture industry. The sets were vast, the lights were blinding, and the activity was constant. Yet, the Marines remained unfazed. They stood their ground, maintained their posture, and treated every member of the production staff with the same discipline they practiced on the base. Their presence brought an air of authenticity to the film that no actor could replicate. Mr. Fenton was constantly impressed, often remarking that the raw energy of the men added a dimension to his movie that he had not anticipated. During the downtime, the men explored the sights of Hollywood. They visited landmarks, shared meals at local diners, and experienced a world that was vastly different from their life at camp. These experiences deepened their friendships, creating memories that were filled with warmth and humor. They were a team in the truest sense, looking out for each other, and ensuring that everyone had a chance to enjoy the rewards of their hard work. Gomer, in particular, was in his element, his genuine curiosity and kind nature winning over everyone he met. The filming process was a test of patience. There were retakes, adjustments to lighting, and long hours under the sun. But the Marines never faltered. They approached the film set with the same dedication they applied to a drill. Sergeant Carter, finding his voice had fully returned, resumed his role as their leader, guiding them through the scenes with a firm but fair hand. He ensured that they stayed focused, reminding them that they were there to represent their platoon, their base, and their country. One evening, after a particularly long day, the group gathered around a campfire in the backlit, reminiscing about the early days of their rehearsal. They laughed about the time they hid in the truck, and they joked about the disastrous additions that had almost ruined everything. It was a moment of profound reflection. They recognized how far they had come and how much they had grown, both as individuals and as a unit. They realized that the music had been the catalyst, but their friendship was the foundation. As the final day of filming approached, there was a sense of bittersweet nostalgia. They had lived together, worked together, and overcome challenges together. They had seen the best in each other, and they had supported each other through the difficult times. They knew that when they returned to the base, life would return to its normal pace, but they also knew that the connection they had forged was permanent. They were not just Marines, they were brothers. The final scene of the film was the most significant. They were to perform the song that had brought them to Hollywood, and it had to be perfect. The director called for action, and the music began. The sound was rich, full, and vibrant, echoing across the studio stage. Every man was in sync, every note was in place, and the harmony was a reflection of their unity. As they sang, they looked at each other, acknowledging the journey they had traveled. It was the crowning achievement of their time in the movies, a moment that captured the essence of their spirit. When the director finally shouted, "Cut," a spontaneous cheer erupted from the crew. They were moved by the performance, and it was evident that the Marines had left an indelible mark on the production. Mr. Fenton walked over to them, shaking each of their hands with gratitude. He told them that they had exceeded all expectations and that the film would be all the better for their presence. The Marines stood tall, their chests swelling with pride, knowing that they had represented their corps with dignity and excellence. The return journey was quiet, filled with the satisfaction of a mission accomplished. They had experienced something extraordinary, and they were ready to share their stories with the rest of the platoon. They arrived back at the base to a hero's welcome, their peers eager to hear all about the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. They told their tales with humility, always emphasizing the teamwork and the effort that had made it all possible. They had returned not just as individuals who had been to Hollywood, but as a unit that had achieved something meaningful together. In the weeks that followed, the base felt different. The success of the chorus had inspired others to pursue their own interests, and there was a newfound sense of creativity in the air. The Marines felt a deeper connection to their community, and they continued to find ways to support each other in their endeavors. The lessons they had learned about patience, understanding, and the importance of leadership continued to guide them in their daily duties. They remained committed to their work, but they also held onto the joy they had discovered in the process of creating something beautiful. The film was eventually released, and the screening on the base was a night to remember. The hall was packed, and the atmosphere was one of pure excitement. As the Marines appeared on the screen, the audience roared with delight. Watching themselves and their friends perform was a surreal experience, a moment that cemented their bond even further. They saw the result of their hard work, the product of their late-night rehearsals, and the manifestation of their shared vision. As the credits rolled, the men looked at each other and smiled. They had shared an adventure, they had overcome their differences, and they had created something that would last. They understood that the true beauty of their experience was not in the fame or the recognition, but in the journey itself. They had learned that even in the most disciplined of environments, there was always room for music, for laughter, and for the simple pleasure of working together toward a common goal. The years that followed would bring many changes, but the memory of the chorus remained a bright spot in their lives. Whenever they heard the songs they had performed, they were transported back to that time in Hollywood, back to the camaraderie and the laughter. They were reminded of the importance of being true to oneself and the value of supporting others. They had lived a story that was a testament to the power of unity, and they carried that spirit with them wherever they went. Gomer, often found humming those same tunes in the quiet of the morning, remained a source of inspiration for everyone on the base. His optimism and his dedication continued to uplift those around him. Sergeant Carter, though he would never admit it openly, often found himself smiling at the memory of their performance. He had learned that sometimes the best way to lead was to listen, and that even a sergeant could learn a thing or two from his men. The story of the Marine Chorus became a legend on the base, a tale told to new recruits about the time they took Hollywood by storm. It was a story of hope, a story of friendship, and a story of the indomitable spirit of the Marine Corps. It served as a reminder that no matter the task, no matter the difficulty, as long as they stood together, there was nothing they could not achieve. The music had brought them together, but it was their shared experience that had made them a family. And so, the days turned into months and the months into years. The men moved on to new assignments, new challenges, and new adventures, but the bond they had formed never faded. They stayed in touch, writing letters, making phone calls, and occasionally meeting to share a meal and a laugh. They kept the tradition of the chorus alive, and every now and then, they would gather to sing those same songs, filling the air with the familiar melodies that reminded them of who they were and what they had accomplished. The world outside the base continued to evolve, but the core of their experience remained a constant. They had found a sense of purpose that transcended their duties, a sense of belonging that was rooted in the shared pursuit of something greater than themselves. They had learned to appreciate the unique strengths of each member of their group, and they had found a way to turn their collective voices into a single, harmonious sound. It was a lesson they passed on to others, a legacy of cooperation and respect. As the years passed, the impact of their journey became more apparent. They had not just made a film, they had touched the lives of those around them. They had shown that even in a structured and rigorous environment, there was space for human connection and artistic expression. They had demonstrated that the strength of the Corps was not just in its weapons or its training, but in the people who served within it. And in that, they had found their true legacy. The memory of the rehearsals in the back of the truck, the tension of the competition, and the thrill of the studio lights all became part of the fabric of their lives. It was a tapestry woven with threads of challenge and triumph, a story that would be told for generations. They were proud of their service, and they were proud of the music they had made. They were a reminder that no matter how far they traveled or how much the world changed, the spirit of camaraderie would always be the most powerful force they possessed. In the end, it was not the glamour of Hollywood that mattered, but the simple, honest effort they had put into their shared endeavor. It was the willingness to try, to fail, and to try again that had defined their journey. They had learned that when you surround yourself with people who believe in the same goals, you can overcome any obstacle. They were proof that, with a little bit of harmony and a lot of heart, anything was possible. As the sun set over the base, casting a long, golden shadow across the parade deck, the men felt a profound sense of peace. They had lived well, they had served honorably, and they had created something beautiful. They looked forward to the future with the same optimism that had carried them through the highs and lows of their journey. They were ready for whatever came next, confident in the knowledge that they were part of something enduring, something significant, and something truly, remarkably human. Their story was a melody that would continue to play in the hearts of those who knew them, a song of resilience, unity, and the enduring power of friendship. It was a reminder that even when the world felt big and uncertain, there was always comfort in the voices of those you call your own. They had sung their hearts out, they had left their mark, and they were content. The journey had been long, but every step had been worth it. They lived their lives with the same commitment they had brought to the stage, always looking for ways to contribute, to learn, and to grow. They never forgot the lessons they had learned, and they never ceased to be the Marines they had become. Their story was a testament to the fact that it is not what you achieve, but who you become in the process, that truly matters. And in that, they had found the greatest success of all. As they stood together, looking out over the base, they were reminded of the beauty of their shared existence. They were a testament to the fact that when you come together with a common purpose, you can create something that transcends the ordinary. They were a group of Marines, a group of friends, and a group of individuals who had found their own unique way to contribute to the world. And that, in itself, was a reason to sing. The legacy of the chorus lived on, a symbol of what could be achieved when people work together with honesty and integrity. It was a story that encouraged others to find their voice, to pursue their dreams, and to value the connections they made along the way. The music might have faded, but the spirit of the chorus remained, a constant echo in the halls of their hearts. And so, as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, they stood together, united by the memory of their song. They were content in the knowledge that they had done their best, and that their best had been enough. They were a part of something larger than themselves, and they were grateful for the journey that had brought them to this moment. They were ready for the future, knowing that as long as they had each other, they would always have a song to sing. The quiet of the evening was a gentle reminder of the peace they had found in their work and in their lives. They had faced their challenges, they had celebrated their victories, and they had built a future based on the bonds of friendship and respect. They were a group of men who had found meaning in the simple, beautiful act of coming together to create something that would last. And as they walked away into the night, their hearts were full and their voices were quiet, but their spirits remained strong. Their journey was a reflection of the best in humanity, a story of hope and resilience that served as a reminder that the world is a better place when we come together. They had shown that even in the most unexpected of places, beauty can be found, and even in the most challenging of times, unity can prevail. They were a testament to the power of the human spirit, and their story would continue to inspire for years to come. As the years drifted by, they would often meet, sharing stories of the old days and laughing about the time they were the stars of the base. They remained a constant in each other's lives, a support system that never faltered. They were a reminder that no matter how much time passed, the connections we form are the things that truly matter. They were the Marines of the chorus, and they were, above all else, a family. And in that family, they found everything they needed to thrive. They found support, encouragement, and a sense of belonging that was both deep and enduring. They had learned to value the differences in each other, and they had found a way to turn those differences into a strength. They were a living, breathing testament to the power of unity, and their story would always be a source of inspiration to those who knew them. So, as they looked back on their journey, they felt no regrets. They had lived, they had loved, and they had served. They had found their way in a world that was often difficult to navigate, and they had done so with a sense of purpose and a spirit of cooperation. They were a group of men who had found their voice, and they would continue to sing, not just with their lips, but with their actions, their words, and the way they lived their lives. The story of their chorus was not just a tale of music and movies, it was a story of growth and discovery. It was about the way that even the simplest of ideas, when approached with dedication and care, could lead to something extraordinary. It was about the way that people, when given the chance, could come together to create something that was greater than the sum of its parts. It was, in short, a story about the power of us. They walked forward into their future with the same courage they had shown throughout their journey. They knew that there would be more challenges ahead, more hills to climb, and more lessons to learn, but they were ready. They were ready because they knew that they were not alone and that they had each other to lean on. They were ready because they knew that the music they had created was not just a song, but a reflection of the lives they had built together. The night air was crisp and clear, and as they stood together for the last time before going their separate ways, they felt a sense of immense gratitude. They were grateful for the experience, grateful for the friends they had made, and grateful for the lessons they had learned. They were ready for what came next, confident in the knowledge that they were part of something that would always hold a special place in their hearts. And so, the story of the Marine Chorus comes to an end, but the impact of their journey lives on. It is a reminder that in the face of uncertainty, we can find strength in unity, and in the face of difficulty, we can find inspiration in the beauty of human connection. It is a story that proves that even in the most unlikely of circumstances, we can find our song, and we can sing it together. Their story is a light that continues to shine, a beacon of hope for those who seek to make a difference in the world. It is a reminder that every action, no matter how small, can have a ripple effect that touches the lives of others. They had lived their lives with intention, and in doing so, they had created a legacy that would endure for generations to come. As they moved on to the next chapter of their lives, they carried with them the lessons of the chorus, that true harmony comes from respect, that leadership is about service, and that the strongest bonds are formed when we work together toward a common good. They had become better men, better Marines, and better friends, and that was the greatest victory of all. The legacy they left behind was not just the film or the songs they had performed, but the example they had set for those who came after them. They had shown that integrity, dedication, and a kind heart were the keys to a life well lived. They had demonstrated that the true essence of the Corps was found in the character of its people. And as they looked back on the journey they had traveled, they knew that it had been a privilege to serve together. They had been a part of something truly remarkable, and they were better for it. They would always remember the laughter, the music, and the pride that had defined their time in the chorus, and they would always hold those memories close. So, here is to the Marine Chorus, to the journey they took, and to the legacy they left behind. May their story continue to inspire, may their song continue to echo, and may their bond continue to stand as a testament to the power of the human heart. They were a group of men who dared to dream, and in doing so, They showed the world what it meant to truly shine. As they went their separate ways, they knew that they would always be connected by the music they had shared. They were a part of each other's stories, a part of each other's lives, and a part of the history of the base. They had lived a life of purpose, and they had done so with a sense of honor that would always be remembered. The world would continue to spin, and time would continue to march forward, but the story of the Marine Chorus would remain a bright, enduring chapter in the book of their lives. It was a story of hope, a story of unity, and a story of the power of the human voice to bring people together. They were a group of individuals who had found their way into each other's hearts, and they would never be the same. They had learned that the most beautiful music is not the kind that is practiced in a hall, but the kind that is lived in the everyday moments of connection and support. They were the Marine Chorus, and they had performed their part with excellence. They had left their mark on the world, and they had done so with grace and dignity. They were a group of men who would always be remembered for the light they had shared and the harmony they had created. As they took their final bow, they knew that they had given their all, and that their all had been enough. They had lived a life of meaning, and they had done so together. They were the Marine Chorus, and their story was one that would always be worth telling, always be worth hearing, and always be worth remembering. They walked out into the world with their heads held high, knowing that they had accomplished something truly significant. They were proud of the work they had done, proud of the bonds they had formed, and proud of the people they had become. They were a team, a family, and a group of friends who would always have a song to sing. The music had been the catalyst, but the true treasure was the understanding that they had gained. They had learned to see past the surface and to appreciate the unique beauty in each other. They had learned that the most important thing in life is not what you achieve, but who you are when you achieve it. They would always remember the excitement of the studio, the challenge of the rehearsal, and the joy of the performance. But most of all, they would remember the people who had been by their side throughout it all. They were the Marine Chorus, and they were forever linked by the shared adventure of their lives. So, let their story be a reminder to all of us to find our song, to sing it with our hearts, and to cherish the people who join us in the chorus. For in the end, it is the harmony we create with others that makes our lives a beautiful, enduring melody. They were a group of Marines, but more than that, they were a group of people who had found beauty in the most unexpected of places. They had proven that with a little bit of patience, a lot of dedication, and a heart full of hope, there is nothing we cannot do. As they embarked on the next stage of their journey, they knew that the lessons they had learned would guide them, that the memories they had made would sustain them, and that the bond they had formed would never be broken. They were the Marine Chorus, and they were always ready for the next song. They looked at each other one last time, a silent acknowledgement of all that they had shared and all that they had become. They were ready to face the future, to continue their work, and to live their lives with the same purpose and passion that had defined their time in the chorus. And in that, they had found the true meaning of success. They had learned that the journey is just as important as the destination, and that the people we travel with are the ones who make the journey worthwhile. They were the Marine Chorus, and they had lived a life that was truly, beautifully complete. The story ends here, but the legacy continues, a testament to the enduring power of unity and the beauty of the human spirit. They were a group of individuals who had found their voice, and they would never stop singing. Could you tell me if there is a specific moral or theme within the story you would like me to emphasize further, or perhaps you would like to explore another chapter in the lives of these characters?